Welcome to Face to Face. This is a show about change and about what's next. It's a show that wants to ask questions, peel back the layers of our average everyday experience, and go beyond scratching the surface. We interview amazing people with incredible ideas and stories who have done wild, weird, and wonderful things. Remember that imagination shared creates collaboration, and collaboration creates community, and community inspires social change. I'm David Peck, and this is Face to Face. So I think you're going to really enjoy my next interview with Magali Simard. She's a programmer from the Toronto International Film Festival, TIFF, 40th anniversary, by the way. And apparently her secret film love is The Little Mermaid, and I have to tell you now, she still hasn't seen Star Wars. She's going to kill me for saying that right out of the gate. Anyway, you are going to really enjoy this interview. We talk about the Human Rights Film Festival coming up at TIFF, and it's starting very soon in the next week or so. We talk about a lot of things. We talk about the power of film basically to change the way we see the world. And I know it sounds a little lofty, but any cinephile will tell you, including Magali, it's kind of what drew her in the first place. And I think I can certainly agree. And she talks about her own sort of history and what drew her in. One of the things that I found really interesting that came up in the conversation was this idea of films that are important and great. They leave space for us to think about the issues on our own. And that's exactly what the Human Rights Film Festival is really all about. And it's coming up, like I said, in the very near future. Check it out, tiff.net. Magali Simard, you're going to enjoy it. Stay tuned. Well, welcome to Face to Face. We are joined by a very special guest today from the Toronto International Film Festival, or the Lightbox. I'm not really sure. I'll let you correct me in a second here, Magali, but Magali Simard is with us here today. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So tell me why you're on the show today. What's coming up that my listeners need to hear about?
Well, one of the many things that we show at TIFF Lightbox year-round is our Human Rights Watch Film Festival, which is a bit different for us. We usually solely on our own program just about everything that TIFF puts together, whether it's at the festival in September or throughout the year in our cinemas here or even in some other cities when we sort of go out of the city to present some stuff. In this case, we partner with Human Rights Watch, the organization, for a film festival of where we present 8 titles, all contextualized by guest speakers on stage. And they're all films that, as you can probably imagine, given our partnership, that really treat, that explore, and we certainly hope expose human rights breaches from across the world. It's, in a way, different for a programmer like me who usually sort of picks on her own what she wants to show to an audience. In this case, we need these films vetted by Human Rights Watch researchers so that the content, which, obviously we're not, film programmers are not experts in all the subjects that we see documentaries on, and they vet the content of the film so that we can present what we think is the best package of films that speak the truth and that are also really interesting for cinephiles.
Magali, can you talk about a film like this? Can a film like this be entertaining as well as informative? I mean, is that fair to even ask that question? I mean, we're talking about human rights and typically human rights abuses, I would think.
It's absolutely fair, yeah. It's absolutely fair. I mean, we certainly don't want to present any other way than something that's truly engaging. Maybe engaging.
Engaging's a good word.
But some of them are entertaining. I mean, they clip along. They have narrative arcs. We show in this year's lineup, just to put people in context a little bit, we're showing 7 documentaries and 1 fiction film.
Okay.
But a lot of these docs, which is the vast majority of the lineup, really clip along. They have a narrative arc built in. We're not just sort of like aimlessly following an issue. It's not hammer over the head about being issue films. We really try to present these films, and they're very different from one another. Some are a bit light-hearted in some ways, even if they speak of, terrible realities, whether they're at home or abroad. So, yeah, I would say, like, even our opening night film, I Am Sun Moo, about a North Korean artist defected to South Korea, and he's partnering with an art gallery in China to open his first show out of the country. It's a stressful situation. He might get arrested. Everybody's on hand. But the whole film is a narrative arc of will we open this show? And all of this is shown through also the lens of his paintings that are basically pop art that they look like fake propaganda art that he sort of was trained on. So they're extremely gorgeous, poppy type paintings that really dynamize this movie completely. There's no dead moment in a film like this, and for us, it's a perfect way to kickstart the festival.
Yeah, oh, that's great. So lighthearted's great. So I'm going to go a little lighthearted right now.
Yep.
And according to your bio on the TIFF site, you still haven't seen Star Wars.
Oh my God, that's embarrassing. I have never seen the original Star Wars.
Oh, there's a part of me that wants to end our phone call right now. It's that's an outrage.
I understand if you just want to. I won't hold it against you. I saw the latest one, which I liked.
Yes,
But I'm someone with no references in that world. It's funny, I'm also not interested in seeing them. Like, people are like, well, since you last said that, did you see it? And I'm like, no, I literally kind of forgot again.
It's clearly not on your radar. It's
not on my radar. That being said, I love blockbuster movies, I love sci-fi, and I love action flicks. I just happen to not care about Star Wars. Which I know you've probably lost, like...
Well, I was pretty young when Star Wars came out, and I was Luke Skywalker for, probably the next 2.5 years of my life. And to say that Star Wars changed my life is probably a bit of an understatement. But, of course, when I read that on your bio on your page, I laughed out loud.
Yeah, maybe
and
we
thought,
need to take that off my bio.
Yeah, you really do.
It's never going to work again.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. You'll be blacklisted from various communities around the world. So let's jump back into another arena, and I'm going to read a quote on the press release by you. Cinema has become the most compelling tool in the human rights movement. At a time in our history where the demand for social change is louder than ever, the Human Rights Watch Film Festival and its ability to galvanize change is more crucial than ever, close quote. That was you that said that. Have you come to believe that? Have you come to learn that over time? Or would you say you've always kind of believed that?
I certainly have always believed in the power of film to change our world, or change the way we... I mean, now, I sound like... I'm quoting my own company's branding, but it's true. It does change the way people see the world.
Sure
we hope that it will change the world, but, as we all know, first and foremost, it has to come from within. We all watch the news. Some of us watch it sort of like maniacally throughout the day, nonstop, online. It's hard to process this type of information, especially as we consume it like faster and faster, and not to say that the information that we're given is inaccurate or not profound enough, but it doesn't leave us a lot of time to sort of seep in these realities. And to sit now through, say, a 75, 90-minute, 100-minute movie created more often than not by a real film artist, not just someone recording what's going on around them, someone that's truly trying to shape the stories and make them understandable and relatable to us, and yet leave enough space for us to think on our own within them. That's really a value that these films can have for the audience. That's when I think we can process internally things that are so often foreign to us, understandable or not understandable to us right off the bat. And it's through sitting through them the fact that we have guest speakers really changes everything.
Sure,
a lot of these situations, you don't need to know what happened in the Rwandan genocide to come see the Uncondemned. You'll get a full recap of that, and then an entire law case that went around it. We really don't want to present these films as being unapproachable or for people that already know a lot about these issues. It's a lot about discovery of subjects and discovery of filmmakers, and for us to kind of wrap our head around it together. The movie experience, I work for a film organization that presents literally 95% of everything we present is in cinemas. I truly still believe that being together in a cinema for 90 minutes and then talking about it together with the same people that sat with, watching it live with you does make a difference. It's much different than reading news at your desk on your lunchtime or throughout the day when you see posts.
Would you say you're hoping that people would leave a theater? I screened Almost Holy this morning, which you and I just chatted about briefly offline, but brilliant film, as we said, gorgeous to watch. Such a difficult subject. Disturbing is an understatement, I think, and it leaves me with all kinds of unanswered questions. I want to dig deeper. But I'm a bit of a film buff. I'm a philosopher by nature. I do dig. Do you want people to leave the theater, heading for the nearest computer to start doing some research? Is it about social change is about, I think, splash and ripple. It's about incrementalism and making better choices, I guess, right?
Exactly, and we don't expect everybody to react the same to all films. Obviously, nobody has control over that, or should want to anyway. Some people will see Almost Holy, the movie that you saw this morning by Steve Hoover, who did Blood Brother, which was a big festival success, starting with Sundance 2 years ago, and really had a big life. And then came back with Almost Holy, which is set in the Ukraine with this pastor who's sort of taking into his own hand the problem of drugs in local youth. In his city. He's a very polarizing figure.
He sure
the movie
is.
does not present a clear case of whether we should think he does great or he should be controlled a bit more. At the same time, he says, okay, I'm not kosher in some ways, or in most ways, but I feel like the system has abandoned our youth, and if I don't do this, literally nothing's going to happen, or it's going to get worse. It leaves you in a total state of wonder as to, like, wow, first of all, this can happen somewhere in the world right now. Like, this is a weird way of approaching it. Like, you have scenes, like, people have not seen it yet as they will hear this conversation, but there's literally scenes of them, like, at 3 a.m. yanking drugged out, like, nearly like needle and armed kids from gutters as they're super high and can't even understand what's going on. Yanks them, put them in a white van, the most terrifying thing for any youth.
Yes.
And then, like, forced to sobriety and try to be taken care of, and giving them a home, which is where they work from, the center that he works at. It's really odd. It is disturbing. It's a disturbing movie with images that you can never forget, but it's a beautifully crafted film.
Beautifully crafted film, and I think at one point, and I don't think we're tipping our hat too much to the film, but I mean, it really is about responsibility for this pastor, and he says, if the people in power aren't going to do it, then I have to, or we have to. We as a society have to.
There's fault in the system that I will use, which is him. If it was a system, there would be even more fails on their part. Like, he distrusts them to a point where he's like, anything that I can do, even if it's wrong. Or
that's right.
It's going to go quicker, too. There's no bureaucracy. There's nobody signing off on this. But at the same time, things happen. Like, in the end, you wonder, do we prefer he's there or not? And not. I mean, personally, I prefer he's there than not.
Yeah, no, I think I land in the same place as you. Do you think? I mean, can you? I mean, I certainly could look back in my sort of history of watching films, including Star Wars, and see kind of some of those moments that were life-changing for me, that propelled me forward, that started me thinking about things differently, that in a new way, in a new light. I saw the world in a different way, a new framework, a new worldview, etc. Open doors. We could talk about all kinds of different metaphors and so on. I'd love to know what one or two of those were for you. And then I'd love to ask you the question about this whole idea. Sometimes I wonder if documentary film is preaching to the converted, these types of important films. Like, I made the distinction years ago between sort of a great film and an important film. I'm sure I'm not the first one to have done that, but to me, Almost Holy is both. You got to see it on a variety of levels, but it's also important.
It is also important, exactly. It's a great film. I think any cinephile or hardcore cinephile, like I seem to gather that you are, that I am, that a lot of our audiences are here, no matter the subject of this film, will absolutely appreciate the way this film is made. And the people that are in it more to learn about this situation and see, it's also a complete exposure. That's a very achieved piece of journalism in that sense as well. And that's really what the series truly is about. I mean, we often show great films, we often show important films, but not always will we concentrate on a full series that for any film to be in, they kind of need to meet these criteria. They have to be compelling and also great for people that love cinema and the arts of, crafting it.
I mean, I'm a hopeful cynic. I really am. I think this movie, and I think others like it, and do in fact change the way we see the world. I really believe that. But sometimes I wonder, I'll walk out of a film like Almost Holy this morning, or many others, and think, wow, everyone needs to see that, and sadly, everyone won't.
Everyone won't. That's absolutely true. That's why, series are important, festivals are important. This film is not going to come to theaters, or if it does, it will be a very short run. It's not impossible, but it's, that's more likely the case of a lot of docs, unless they're the massive sort of art stars of the year that end up with a lot of nominations and travel the world and get Netflix deals and things like that. They don't get heavily consumed. That being said, the past decade has been a bit of a crazy heyday for documentaries and documentarians. I mean, the 90s and even the 2000s did not have as many sort of famous documentarians as we have now. They now, like, if I think of last year, like Joshua Oppenheimer with The Act of Killing and the follow-up Look of Silence, Laura Poitras with Citizen 4, and who's now launching a huge series, partly funded by the BBC, a documentary journalistic type series. These people have huge creative control and huge industry control in their world. Documentaries sell to distributors and to networks for way more money than they have 8 years ago. It's a really great time. A lot of them get released, and a lot of them make money, which is not something that every decade has seen. So sure, I would say that, like, of the films that we're showing, we don't want to just show films that will come to theaters. We also want to find the gems that are rare. And, like, if series like this don't show these films, then literally, like, good luck seeing them. So
well, it's so, it's like TIFF, right? What is it, 360 films you guys bring? And how many of them are actually going to make it into the theaters? Not that many, right?
No, it's not that many. It's a fraction.
I mean, what a glorious opportunity.
It is a glorious opportunity. And the good thing is, like, in a case like this, we present one film a day. So at least, during TIFF, it's literally, like, for people, it's like an embarrassment of riches as to which one to pick. You always wonder if you're making the right choice. You get this sort of, like, anxiety around
it's true.
Losing sleep over it.
Yes. Yes, I hear sales of Prozac and clonazepam go up significantly during Toronto International Film Festival. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I think we should, like, give some with
That's right.
Heavy purchasers.
That's right. I think you should. Yes. So do you think there's a sense that I mean, I remember seeing a really brilliant film. One of my favorite countries in the world where I do a lot of work is Cambodia, and a friend of mine who's a filmmaker has become a friend of mine, Kaliani Mam, River Changes Course, a brilliant, beautiful film. In fact, we brought her up here to the Bloor Cinema, and we showed it, and we had it was like this little sort of one-off mini fundraising film festival, and it was really cool and wonderful. And I remember a couple people saying to me that they actually couldn't watch the film because it was so dull. And I'm always stunned by that, because the room, it was a beautiful response. And I mean, and then Kaliani would say the same thing. You can't win over everybody, right? You can't get everyone. You just can't, right?
No, and it's tough to sort of get over those types of comments, because you kind of start thinking, oh, is it indicative of the whole room? But it's
oh, it so wasn't in this case. That's for sure. No. Standing ovation, wonderful Q&A, great response since, so yeah, no, it wasn't. But you just kind of go, should you sort of just ignore those criticisms entirely? Or, we
listen to the audience at the same time. I mean, we feel very confident in the films that we show. Like, we picked 8 films, but I literally watched at least 170 films.
Wow, that's
subject matters of the sort.
Incredible.
So, if someone comes in and, like, says that something was extremely dull for them, there's really nothing else I can do for them in that sense. It's like I've literally reviewed everything that's made in the past year around subjects of human rights breaches, and this, we think, represents many.
So other than wrestling people to the ground, what do you do when somebody says to you, you know what, I just want to be entertained? Like, don't preach to me. Don't tell me how horrible this world is, etc.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to respond to that in a way. To me, it's like, well, I hope you did learn something out of it. One of my best friends who works here, not in film programming, but an avid film goer, always says, like, I any day will take a boring documentary over a boring fiction film, because at the very least, even if I'm suffering through it, I will learn something out of it. It's a true situation, that's happening somewhere. It may not be the best. In this case, I do think they are the best, but doesn't mean everybody will agree. And the thing is, like, the audience that comes to this is typically interested in the first place. Like, it's actually called a Human Rights Film Festival, so they're not completely blindsided by the content. I hope that they're not.
Yes, yeah.
This is not like movies about fashion.
That's right.
Yeah. Things like that. And so they're kind of already interested. They know that, some subjects they might know a little bit about, some they may not. They always have favorites. A lot of them come to way more than one film throughout the series. Some people come to, like, 7 or all 8 films. it's it's in which I champion and I'm impressed by, like to say, oh, for the next 7 days I'm only going to watch films about human rights violations is quite the commitment. At the same time, as we said earlier, it's important for us to have like very diversified stories. Our film on LGBT this year, Inside the Chinese Closet, is about young gay people in Shanghai whose parents and sort of background forced them to go into straight marriages, but everybody knows, everybody that's close to them, like the parents that are insisting on this, and the kids themselves know that this is arranged, but it's arranged on both sides. So it's a gay woman marrying a gay man so that their families are happy, and they have these apps on their phone that literally it's a Tinder kind of app for that purpose. So it's like, let's just find a match with someone I can actually like tolerate, or hopefully, in the best case scenario, at least be friends with, and maybe we can have a child together. Childbearing seems more often than not like one of the key part of those unions, but the film isn't, hammer over the head sad. There's none of that. It's more like they're kind of fun lives, very unfortunate that they're forced into this. They're trying to make the best out of it. It's very moving, too, when they kind of find someone they can at least do a little bit with, all the while realizing that they can't marry who they want, which is something for them that really sinks in as they're going through that process. So, it's a bit of both.
You referred to yourself as a cinephile. I mean, I guess you kind of have to be to work there in some respects. What pulled you in? Was it one film? Was it a series of films? Was it an undergraduate degree? What was, it certainly wasn't Star Wars, that's for sure.
It was not Star Wars. You know what? It was Star Wars. I wanted to prove that you didn't have to.
That's right. Yes.
Mission to prove
turning
that you don't need this.
Turning it on its head, yes.
Yeah. It's a bit of everything. I have to credit my parents for exposing me to international films from a very young age. I'm from Quebec, and we always saw a lot of movies with subtitles even at a young age. I wouldn't say that I was in love with all of these films. I'm not going to pretend I was. I am not to this date, obviously. Still very critical of it. But,
yes.
They did a lot of that. And the film, like if I can name a film that really was, you mentioned like the film from the people you know, and for me, like when I saw Alain René's Hiroshima Mon Amour, the French film, fabulous film, definitely a cinephile's movie, like zero entertaining, like rock bottom, not entertaining.
Right.
But honestly,
that's the soundbite. That's what the filmmaker wants in the review.
On the Criterion DVD, they put that on the poster. But honestly, like to me, one of the most enthralling, magical piece of cinema ever made. And I remember like renting the little VHS tape because I liked the title, and it was a French film, and I wanted to get to know cinema a bit more. I was like a young teen, and my parents went to bed, and I put it in. Other people were watching other things when their parents went to bed, but I watched Alain René. And
wow.
And I wouldn't say that I liked it then, but it kind of like triggered something in me that was just like, oh my God, cinema can be completely different and not follow narrative paths that we're used to. It's not telling me the same story. I don't feel like I'm being treated like an audience, treated like a child who just needs to hear the same thing to feel comforted. I'm totally out of that zone. And I hope there's more of those films, and of course there's a gazillion. So that was a trigger. I really remember fondly, I remember the TV set. I remember that the image was in.
Wow,
I
that's
really
cool.
remember the light in the room. Like it's
yes.
a very fond memory for me, and so I've been a big fan of René, of course. Following that, when I really got to get seriously into it, and then yes, I studied film in Quebec and at University of Toronto, and quickly after that started working here at TIFF.
Night and Fog was a film for me that I was.
Movie.
Quite unbelievable film. In my opinion, one of the greatest docs ever made. What is it, 27 minutes long? I mean, it's short.
It is, and it's absolutely a masterpiece. I agree.
It's so powerful, and I have a similar experience as you. I don't remember the television. I don't know where. I think I saw it in a high school class, maybe. Clearly, a progressive teacher of some kind. Maybe showed us clips, and I think I was struck by the I think at the risk of sounding pretentious, the juxtaposition and the I think the existential sort of cry, and I think in some ways I can look back and say that was a part of why I ended up reading philosophy later in life, and then actually studying it academically.
Wow.
To say how the hell did we end up here?
Yeah.
How could we possibly get to this?
Yeah. How can the path of humans through
Yeah.
a short amount of time get?
I mean, what a
So
great
far, so fast.
human rights film, right?
It
I
is.
mean, it's
It is.
just, yeah, well, that's interesting. It's fun that we sort of share that piece of commonality there. That's cool. Well, I wonder, I wish we all had those stories, right? I wish
Yeah.
we could all talk about those films, and I think that's part of what keeps me going to see docs and to watching them is that I'm I want everybody to be excited about the movies that I watch.
Same here. I mean, when you have
know?
that visceral, well, it's like people constantly talk about their best restaurants because they're
Right,
visceral experiences.
right.
Like on a much more basic level. Same with films when we have these absolutely visceral reaction. Whether we watch, I always refer to like the in-cinema experience because I'm very close to it, but it can be at home, it can be on Netflix, it can be on Amazon, it can be on YouTube. But you have this moment, and you don't want to be alone in it. I mean, these are cultural artifacts that are made to be discussed and shared.
It's
I mean,
good.
they're made for
It's
audiences.
good.
It's
Yeah,
so
shared in the
get to talk.
community. Shared in the community. I think,
Yeah.
no, I think that's brilliant. I mean, in relation to the Human Rights Film Festival, isn't this really about becoming better humans? And don't we become better humans in the context of community? I mean, I think so.
I think so too, and I think that being confronted even to situations that are so far removed, some of these films tell stories that like really are very hard to connect to our lives here.
Yes.
Seem so foreign, and sometimes they seem so foreign that they seem that like they're from the past.
Right. It's
like
true.
we have no power over any of this. Like no matter how we are, we're all cynical for reasons. We know how power is powerful and how change is difficult to make happen. So we get cynical to a point where we kind of like shove difficult things like as if they're from the past, like we have no agency over any of it, whereas we do. I mean, sure, you, me, watching these films don't directly have an impact on these things, but, again, I don't want to sound cliche either, but the more the people know, that's always the first step. That's always the first step. And on a more sort of, I would say, I don't know if it's a humanist level or a self-searching level, but to be confronted to situations so foreign to us, so different from our lives, opens new little doors within oneself so that the next time you see something similar or the same kind of breach that may not be of the same nature but of the same flavor, if I can say,
Sure.
At home, it clicks way quicker.
Sure.
Because it's no longer the first time you heard it. So within you, you even know how to react. You've sort of gone through that sort of like mental internal philosophy of like, what do I think of this? And you
provides a perspective.
It does, and you suddenly have a new grid in your brain somewhere that can deal with that.
So I already know, I think, some of the answer to this question, just getting to know you in 26 minutes and 5 seconds here on online.
I know.
But you clearly are hopeful. I mean, maybe you're not, but I'd like to hear about hope. I mean, obviously that's what this Human Rights Film Festival is about. It's what human rights is about. It's or at least Human Rights Watch is about. At least I should say. Yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
It's an excellent question. Oh my God,
that's
something to go within yourself. Am I hopeful? I think to be perfectly honest, I think one of the reasons I'm most attracted to programming this series and partnering with Human Rights Watch is that I think I am a cynic at heart, and I think this has completely turned my head around on a lot of stuff in the past 3 years of working on it. I'm now constantly watching these films year-round to get through this throughout the year, throughout the festivals. I have a special eye out for this type of content, and to meet the filmmakers, to meet the journalists that have worked on these cases, to meet the lawyers that are involved in these movies, whether they're on the screen or behind the scenes, having done some of the fight, that a lot of these films are portraying. It's to see that people do work to change things, and to be exposed to it constantly kind of proves to you that there is no reason to always be cynical or resistant or just kind of like fighting the idea that people can really make things happen. And I think that's what deep down, that's why I want to even push myself to never part from it. You know, sometimes within you're just, you know, you're afraid you'll go in the overly cynical route of just like, oh, well, you know, that's the world we live in, or what's a tiny bit of change really that could be overturned so fast in 2 years, you know, all this work to be overturned. And I don't want to go there. I'm a young person who certainly does not want to go there, but I understand that a lot of us get there without really wanting to. And to me, art, and in my life is very especially film, has been the keeper of showing me that we're good and we can do things, you know.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that's part of the reason too why I do the work I do. I think it's part of the reason why I continue to like to ask questions and why I read and why I watch film, because as much as I think I share that with you, I really am pretty, I guess realistic maybe is another way to look at it, but
I think you're right.
Pretty cynical, but at the same time really do want to reach out beyond my grasp and say we can get there, and it's going to take some time. And I think, you know, Almost Holy this morning, the film, and I hope everyone goes to see it that's listening, it's really dark and it's challenging, but you kind of go, hang on a minute, there are some good things happening here, and change is occurring, you know. And I think, you know, instead of walking away feeling powerless and what a horrible world we live in, I come away going, wow, how can I get involved?
How can I get involved? How can I just even discuss this type of content with others? It kind of gets the ball rolling internally as a person, and then people around. Like, it is, especially this movie that you saw this morning, Almost Holy, is like, we're closing the festival with it because it's so strong, and Steve Hoover will be here.
Oh, that's amazing.
That night. Yeah, I can't wait to hear him talk about this.
I may have to try and come out and see it again.
Yeah.
Well, listen, we thank you so much for your time today. Why don't you tell us sort of the details, because we're going to get your podcast up online as soon as possible.
Absolutely.
But tell us when it starts, when it ends, etc. We know there's 8 films, 7 docs, 1 narrative.
Yes, 7 docs, 1 narrative. It's from March 30th to April 7th. We kick off with I Am Sunmoo, about the North Korean artist who had to move, and close it Almost Holy on April 7th. All new films. A lot of them are premieres for North America and for Canada, so a lot of these films have not been seen, and 2 of the films are going to get more major releases later in the spring, and that's Deepan, which won the Palme d'Or, and The Pearl Button by Patricio Guzman. So if you have not caught it basically in Cannes or at TIFF in September, at its 2 screenings, this is the one time to see it in this building. 2 fabulous movies. The festival has grown through the years. We get more people every single year to come out, and we have speakers to contextualize the films and really introduce the audience to this type of content every single night.
Wow, that's great. Magali Simard from Toronto. Is it? Do I say from the Toronto International Film Festival?
Yep.
She's a programmer. She's been there since 2010. Human Rights Film Festival. Check it out. Thanks a lot for your time today, Magali. I hope we can do a part 2 down the road. I think we just barely scratched the surface here.
I completely agree. Thank you. You're very engaged.
Thanks so much.